Hello, and welcome to Norway's #1 radio station.
Today with your hosts. Sorry. This is Daniel with your hosts, Cameron.
And Connor. We're going to be talking about dark matter today. We're going to Canada now to see what's going on
We're
over
going
there.
to our hit reporters in Canada.
Hello, and welcome to The Fool and the Philosopher.
The Philosopher and The Fool.
We've got some interesting news for you, ladies and gentlemen. This just in. September 1st, 2020. Scientists think they've discovered how to detect dark matter. Right? Okay. And you're like, okay, cool. Then September 7th, 2020. Scientists building machinery for detecting dark matter. So in a recent report, we were talking to head scientist. Give me a head scientist's name.
Jeff Goldblum.
Jeff Goldblum. Okay, we were head scientist Jeff Goldblum. We were talking to Dr. Goldblum, and we asked him about the process. And they said, well, what we're going to do is we're going to take a super smooth sphere, and we want it in a equilateral location on the Earth, where everything's very stable and even. There's not too many changes of elevation. We want to be in the middle of a broad plane, and we don't want the curvature of the Earth to be too out of. We want it to be smooth as well. And we're going to spin this incredibly smooth object, sphere. And then we are going to measure the sphere for any deviations in its spinning, ruling out things such as the moon and the sun and everything else we can think of. And we think that we should be able to detect a large body of mass pulling the sphere in an unusual pattern. It's like, oh, well, best of luck with that. Yeah, well, the facility should be up and running in a month, let's say.
All right, Jeff, best of luck with that.
All right, so October 15th, on the news, you hear, breaking news, scientists have discovered dark matter. The facility has suffered internal damage, and several scientists are severely injured in hospital, and several more are with light injuries. No deaths reported as yet. More news as it comes in. A couple hours later. So apparently, a sphere of dark matter is said to have crashed through the floor of the facility, destroying it and collapsing the building in on itself. And then, update on that, there wasn't a sphere of dark matter. There was... we've actually... Dr. Goldblum has kindly agreed to interview us. He avoided injury. And so he's going to tell us what happened step by step. So Goldblum's on the news now, and he's like, okay, well, so early morning, we were setting up everything, testing our equipment, getting everything in place. At around 1:30 p.m., just after lunch, we decided we'd start the test. So we turned on the machinery, started the sphere spinning. It was reaching a very strong pace. It turned out that you can't make a perfect sphere, obviously, so had a slight bit of variance, but we were able to mostly account for that. And we fired up the detectors to check for any wobble in our sphere. And, well, it turns this might seem strange to those of you not in the field of dark matter or
Science.
Hypothetical physics or whatever you want to call it. But by observing the dark matter, we found we were able to interact with it. And so the moment that we started detecting dark matter, it appeared in the room around us. It's strange. It doesn't interact physically. It's more like, imagine a gas. Although even gas, you can't blow it. Your hand passes through it. It doesn't mix with the air. But it behaves like a gas in a visual sort of sense, to get you an idea. And so we were trying to come up with a way to interact with it. So we sent a radio signal through it. We shone light on it. And as we were shining light on it, we ended up heating up an area of the dark matter and began to glow incredibly bright in a perfect sphere growing out from the point of heat. And... We weren't sure what to think of that, but then when we took our hand, when we turned off the heat source, it very, very slowly cooled down back to, well, what we think is room temperature. We haven't actually been able to get back to studies as our place has been wrecked, basically. But the moment it cooled, it became solid and seemed to gain mass or the ability to interact with our dimensions that we would most commonly be within. It was an object about the size of probably, well, it looks like here you're trying to point out like a, what would you say, like a bowling ball maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, so about the size of a bowling ball, maybe a bit smaller. And it crashed through the floor, destroying the facility, and immensely heavy. It sunk deep into the ground. We are working right now to extract it, and just in. That was actually a recording of a conversation we had with him half an hour ago, and they have now weighed the object, which turns out to weigh 1,000 kilograms. And
That's a lot of kilograms.
we went back to Goldblum for more on this, and yes, well, that's remarkable. 1,000 kilograms in less than a bowling ball. Now, well, a bit over
Shouldn't that
1,000
be
kilograms.
incredibly radioactive, Doctor?
That's what we thought. We thought we should all be dead, or there should have been a nuclear explosion. We're very lucky to be alive, and it turns out we are dealing with something much more dangerous than theoretical here. And we're very fortunate that this didn't level a large section of the facility, or of the field. But it's not radioactive at all. In fact, it's not giving off anything. It doesn't give off heat. We can't damage it. We tried.
I see you're holding it there and trying to hold your hand. You must work out a lot to be able to hold 1,000 kilograms.
I'm demonstrating the action of striking it.
That's like incredible strength you've got there, Mr. Goldblum, sir.
This is by far the densest object we've ever found, and
Not as dense as my ex-wife. Yeah.
we're rebuilding the facility, and we're going to do some more tests on it, measure its temperature, and for right now it seems like it's just slightly over 1,000 kilograms in weight, and its temperature. I don't even know if it can be said to have a temperature. It seems to be a perfect insulator in every sense of the word, and indestructible as far as we can tell. We even smacked it with a sledgehammer we had lying around, and nothing. But with that density, you would expect that. We've tried reheating it to the temperature that we originally heated the gaseous substance, the dark matter. This isn't dark matter. We don't know what this is, and we're calling it dark metal for now. We're not really sure what else to call it. I'm putting forward
Make a visor out of it and you'll be able to see into different dimensions.
Some on the team have jokingly suggested goldblumium, but I don't know. Gold is already an element, so it would be a little strange. But so we're doing further tests. This is the news report from 3 months later. The new facility's up and running, and we're excited to see what happens here. And then we've heard actually that this has really taken the scientific world by storm, and there's more facilities around the world, one in China and one in Russia specifically, that are beginning to work on this. But here we are, live back to Germany. This is in Germany, I guess, by the way.
Ja, it's the German scientist. You should have told me, and then I could have had a German interviewer.
Well, we don't have to be German interviewers. It's just Goldblum's a German, but he's a Canadian on transfer to Germany. So, right. But the other scientists are German. Yeah.
I see. Well, isn't that squeaky clean, folks?
They're starting up their next test, and we hoped they've now made a base plate, and they're hoping to heat up the dark matter at a much lower level off the ground, and they're only going to heat up a little bit of it so that they don't have a massive weight crashing through their floor this time. All right, this just in: facility has completely collapsed. Breaking news: the facility where they were testing the dark matter experiment has just collapsed. Several people are believed to be dead, Goldblum among them, and we now go to one of their head scientist in chief,
Eric Moyer.
Eric Moyer. Hello, Eric. Yeah, this is Eric. Yes. Do you know what happens? Oh, it's tragedy, very tragedy. I'm very sad right now.
And that my co-host has broken down during the apparent death of several people because of how outrageous their accent is.
Well, Dr. Moyer. Now this is very this sounds like quite the tragedy for you. No, I'm very sad. You see, what's happened is when we made a tiny bit of the dark matter, we thought it would be safer than the large amount, and we had it on a concrete base. But it drilled a hole straight through the concrete base so fast, it just ignited the concrete or something, and the expanding cloud of gas blew up the facility. And it went straight through one of the lower floors, and unfortunately Goldblum was down there with some of the machine. I don't know why he was directly below the thing. This sounds terrible, actually. No, he was. The building collapsed and he fell in a hole that it made. Yes, that makes much more sense than some. Why would you be directly below the super dense metal? But we didn't think it would give off any harmfulness, but it has totally collapsed. We are now excavating the site to see if we can figure out what's happened. It'll probably be several months. All right, well, we'll get back to you then. I'm very sorry for your loss.
So am I.
No, thank you. All right, several months have passed, and we're here.
Well, several months passed. There's like different news. Then we're like, what would it be? So we were in October 3 months later. From October 3 months later. So we're about in May 2021.
Yeah. So, good news, folks. The coronavirus vaccine is now being has now successfully been made, and they are beginning to stockpile it. We should by June be able to start administering at mass to people in the genetic demographic that we've tested for the strain that we've tested. It's going to be a long one, folks. But in other news, they finally excavated that facility in Germany where Dr. Moyer recently promoted. Congratulations on your promotion, Doctor. Oh, thank you. I'm very proud. And he's been...
So tell me, Doctor, what happened here?
Oh, yes, thank you. I got a little... caught up with the promotions. Well, yes, thank you. Yes, it's professional now, actually. But you see, we were. I've taken over as Goldblum's lessons. It's great being the head of the staff, exactly as planned. So we've rebuilt a new facility because we think we've figured out what has happened, although we're not entirely sure. We've extracted the cause of wreckage, which was a bit of this goldblumium in his honor. We've named it, but gold was already taken, so we've named it
Jeffium.
bloom metal.
Okay.
Bloom crystal, bloom black bloom, dark bloom.
Bloomium?
Dark bloom.
Dark.
Dark bloom, because it killed a man. It was grown from death. Dark bloom. We've named this new metal Dark Bloom, and
Bloom stuff.
Bloom stuff. Yeah, and so we took this metal, and there we go. Okay, we took this metal, and we weighed it again, which was very difficult. We had to construct a new form of weighing things because we couldn't actually have anything to lift it from the ground where it finally rested. And every time we disturbed it, it slipped further in the ground as if the ground was just like quicksand or pudding or something. But we managed to weigh this this marble-sized piece of dark bloom, and it's weighed 1,000 kilograms, almost exactly.
Wasn't that the weight of the bowling ball sized
It was.
Dark Bloom?
That is very fascinating. So we've done another test where we made another bowling ball sized one to see if we could replicate it. And this time on the pattern. And this time only slight cracking occurred, thankfully. And we did notice that we tried to pour more heat in to see if there would be a different effect. But it seems with our heat scanners, it seems to reach a maximum temperature very quickly of let's say 170 degrees. And that is as hot as it gets, the dark matter before it cools, 170. No matter how much heat we pour in, it doesn't seem to increase on heat beyond that. And so we made another one, slightly larger than the first, because we were pouring so much heat in. Now, again, perfectly spherical. And we weighed it, and again, just over 1,000 kilos. There are some people actually suggesting that we redefine a kilogram to be a 1/1000th of a piece of dark bloom, which we can't confirm that all dark bloom weighs the same amount, but that seems to be the case, which would be mind-bending. I'm having troubles with my accent.
It's fine.
Yes, and it appears to be indestructible as well. Now we were wondering, we created a secure facility because we're curious what would happen if we dropped one of those pea-sized ones onto one of the more bowling ball-sized ones, if it was truly indestructible. And
this seems incredibly dangerous and ill-advised.
okay. So it might seem dangerous, but I will give you two cases. Okay, case number one: when the CERN reactor was first fired up, 13 years ago now, maybe 14. I don't know. I'm not a physicist. Yes, I am. I am a leading physicist. Yes. There was concerns that it would cause a black hole, which would engulf the entire Earth. But they did it anyways, without asking anyone else's permission. So we figured, why not? Case number 2. When they first tested the hydrogen bomb, they were worried it would cause the atmosphere to catch fire in an uncontainable, endless nuclear explosion. Or implosion, I guess. And it didn't happen either. So we figured, why not?
Both these cases seem a bit of a slippy wicket.
So what we discovered was it does appear to be indestructible, at least to that much force, which was a lot. We could try nuking it or something, or high-grade explosives. But we also found that when they were together, we weighed them as they were touching, and they weighed 1,000 kilograms. Upon separation, well, we couldn't really separate the one, but we were able to push it off, and then so we don't know what to make of this. But we are doing further experimentation. All right, the year is 2021, June. Good news, folks. Vaccine went great. We're all doing grand. People are holding hands in the street. Everyone's really uniting with their loved ones. But if you are keeping up with that story on dark matter, we've got more with Boyer.
But first, we go to Russia on their studies.
Yes. Ja.
That was da.
Da.
Des Vidania.
Des Vidania. All right. We
made giant globe out of stuff, and it is very big.
It is floating.
It's floating, weighs 100 kilograms. We figure we make bigger one, we might make new kind of spaceship.
We make balloon into space. We have sent 3 rabbits and 1 tortoise in.
Needs very light propulsion.
Yes, we are using it to keep away weather, so it doesn't rain on Russia Day.
We've also figured if we get dark matter in plane, then form very tiny speck, we can make a very powerful weapon.
Well, except not really, because we were thinking about that idea previously, but we've realized a nuke is still much, much higher yield. And
but we have very small space, it can be a precise weapon.
But we can't really fly a plane with this. It would go straight through the metal. We would need to create it in the bomber, which would require.
Yes.
But what we have discovered.
Yes, that's what we've talked about, creating the bomber.
What we have discovered in Russia is that we made a sphere about the size of an apple, and we span that sphere.
What's up in New York? That's a cover. Are you sleeper agent?
No, I toured abroad in Scotland for a while, but we took sphere and we spun it, and we've discovered much more accurate testing measures.
You don't seem very good at the Russian accent.
Because I'm not good at accents, my friend, comrade.
No, you're not.
But we took sphere.
I wanted to go to Russia so I could do a Russian accent. And now you're doing this weird Russian accent. It's very odd sounding.
Anyways, we took sphere and spun it, and it was very spinny.
It spins quite well.
And it was much easier to do the test with. So we've discovered a way to much more streamline the process. And, yes, so, back to, Germany. Oh, hello. We have this, that glowing substance, we wondered if we could shape it and change more than just getting a sphere. A solid sphere. So we took, we tried poking it with a stick, and now I'm New Zealand.
We tried poking it with a stick.
We tried poking it with a stick, and
Crikey, we tried poking it with a stick, didn't work.
Right, so we went to,
went flippery flappy up to Southeast Asia.
Yeah, and
Our accents broke completely down. Now we're in Texas. Yeah.
So we anyways, I'll try talking without an accent to, just so that the viewers back in wherever this station is can.
Is it because I am from Germany coming?
So we Anyways, we tried touch it. Nothing worked. But then one of us had the bright idea of trying to shape it with a piece of dark bloom. So we picked up one of the easier to carry spheres, one of the bowling ball sized ones, with a crane, and we pushed it against it, and it actually did interact, and we were able to get a crescent out of it. And so we think we could, from there, build basically any shape we wished, building the correct tools. So we've been working on that nonstop now.
We are proud to unveil a statue of Jeff Goldblum made in dark blue.
Yeah, as our...
Weighed 100 kilograms, life size.
So this just in, news from France. The Committee of what are they called? SI, the SI, whatever they're called, the Measures Committee has decided that they will in fact be
Define the weight of a kilogram.
Redefining the weight of a kilogram to be exactly 1/1000th of a piece of dark bloom. Furthermore, they've decided to redefine temperature. So they are now the boiling temperature of they've made a new temperature measure where the point of dark bloom the maximum temperature dark matter can reach is now 1,000 units, and each unit translates roughly to about 10 degrees Kelvin, I think. I didn't think this through entirely, but somewhere in there. It works out.
Science says it works out. Trust us.
Yeah, it's fine. Because this seems to be a truly universal constant that if we'd be surprised, said the chair of the International Statistics guy.
International Statistics guy.
Yeah. If extraterrestrial life didn't use dark matter as a way to measure. Elon Musk has announced plans to make a new rocket ship out of this dark bloom, which will be ready by 2025.
So what is this dark bloom? It's stuff from outer space. Aliens. Gonna make people go crazy. All your radiation. You can't detect it, but it's out there. It gets into you, makes you sick, makes you old. Some people crazy. I don't trust this stuff. Buy my shirt. It's resistant to the radiation from dark bloomium psychosomatics.
So a fascinating thing about special relativity is that objects increase in weight the faster they move. And so tests are now being conducted with dark bloom to see what happens at extreme speeds. They should be complete within the next 3 years, where they will send a piece of dark bloom to orbit out by Jupiter and then come back Earth, where they shall be able to detect its speed as it's returning. News from 2023. We've got the piece has returned, and scientists have declared that the weight of the substance now going half the speed of light somehow from a very fast catapult.
Quite a slingshot.
Yeah.
They went out around Jupiter, then slingshot
Maybe
around.
It's been like 15 years. Okay, it's 2038. Elon Musk's project faced delays as usual.
Yeah.
And but he's never not done something. It just takes longer so far. And it's now come back at half the speed of light, and they've been able to weigh it somehow. Onboard sensors. So the sensors themselves have increased in weight as expected, but the piece of dark bloom has not, meaning this might be the key to faster than light travel and possibly time travel.
All right. So where are you going with all this?
So this is, well, where are we going with this? So what next? What's the next discovery? 5 years later, humanity constructs their first
Humanity faces
dark bloom rocket. Far cheaper to launch into space. The biggest difficulty is actually having it not float away.
High winds are a constant issue. They have to have a giant...
Houses are now made cheaply and as perfect insulators out of dark bloom in places where necessary.
Although they do have to be bolted to concrete pads.
Well, no, you just weigh them down with little beads of dark bloom around the edges. You just give them little.
No, it doesn't work because the dark bloom, when it's in contact with their dark bloom, weighs exactly.
Oh yeah. Okay, you put a sheaf of paper. Because for some reason it can push oxygen out of the way, but not paper. Well, my original thing was actually that they don't combine in weight unless you do it in a vacuum, which maybe should be the case then, like in direct contact. But then they'd also fuse together, which I wasn't sure if I wanted, because I wanted you to be able to make like axles out of dark bloom. So I wasn't exactly sure where to go with that. Then I thought if you suspend dark bloom in hot dark matter, then perhaps it could rotate freely. So the idea of this experiment is basically, Aurora 4X. They basically discovered trans-Newtonian elements, which allow them to do stuff that you could never do before. And, in XCOM Terror from the Deep, you have, like, the most advanced technology humanity's ever made. Yeah. But it's underwater and it's basically useless. Yeah. And so most of it you find doesn't work at all. And the stuff that works is, like, harpoon guns and stuff. Yeah. And so you have to discover new ways to do that. And in Xenonauts, their technology tree is brilliant, where they constantly, like, first they get alien armor and they just replace it with their planes to make their planes fly faster and lighter. Mm-hmm. But then they actually find a way to work it and they can make new designs and they find a way to, like, hold plasma in a thing and it goes on and on. So I love that so much, the technological advancement. And especially in Aurora 4X, where you can actually, like, okay, here's my old design of the ship. Here's the new one that weighs half as much, and is twice as fast and has twice as good shielding or something. Yeah. And it's just like, upgrading my ships. Yeah. Feels so good.
It's like trying to apply Reardon steel to everyday application in the world.
Yeah. But so imagine a substance that weighs exactly 1,000 kilograms. Mm-hmm. That is, it turns out, after enough experimentation and overhauling of existing, like, foundries and stuff, it's actually very easy to make in basically whatever shape you want. Mm-hmm. You just have to make a mold for it out of the stuff, and to do that you just use basic tools to create the mold, basically. I was thinking, like, what would this redefine? Like, I think buildings would be huge. Like, rebar and stuff, you just... That's way stronger, way lighter. But it'd be weird because it would scale dependent. Like, you couldn't make, like, super sharp scissors, let's say. Yeah. Because even if you could make... Heavy. Yeah. Because it needs to be big. But what you could do, if it was just in the contact thing, is you could have, like if your house was made of it, right? Yeah. You could have a little cable that you basically attach to your scissors. And then, then your scissors are a portion of the house. Yeah. And the house is 1,000 kilograms, so then these scissors weigh, like, nothing. And then you have, like, these super strong scissors that are super sharp. So I kind of like that idea of just being able to have, like, cables. I was also thinking, if it's indestructible, bendiness might be an issue. I'm not really sure how to think about that. So maybe you could have a chain of it, because then it could, like, do that. So you have, like, a chain of it that you, like, click into your scissors. Yeah. And then you, like... and then if ever, like, it, like... boop, it just wiggles loose tiny, suddenly you're like... just wrench your arm off.
So the making out buildings, basically the solution would be having a massive concrete pad. Yeah. And then you, in the structure of building, you basically have, like, L shapes coming into it. Yeah. And they basically stick into the concrete pad. Yeah. And then still with high wind, it would cause problems.
Be an issue. But I was thinking, like, if it didn't connect with each other, then you could use it to weigh down buildings. You just stick some on top, because it would be, like... It wouldn't break through the building itself. The biggest issue then would be the building, like, sinking into the ground from all the weight on it.
Well, there wouldn't be. There would just be 1,000 kilograms of weight, actually. If it's indestructible, then the relative weight is what you would matter.
Yeah, but I mean, if it didn't do that. Yeah. Like, I couldn't decide if it combined in weight if they touched or not, basically. Yeah. So that's very different. But I think just like a sort of... And the thing about it not changing weight, I think the most exciting thing beyond making rocket ships way cheaper to make, way easier, would be how... You can make cars that would be a lot stronger, which might not be a good thing. But you could also make them cheaper, and you could... Because all you have to do is get a detector, which is just I don't know what the detector would be. Like, that was just my, like, sort of made-up thing. And then you just need a little bit of heat, and then you can do it. Which would cause, I think, like... people in their shed, like, causing all sorts of injuries with creating these super dense little beads and, like, putting holes through their hands and stuff. Like, if you just accidentally heat it a tiny little bit, like, a spark comes up, like, sparks would be devastating. But the ability to go faster than the speed of light would be really interesting to think about. But the problem would be you couldn't be on it.
Yeah, it'd have to be purely made out of the material, actually.
So then I was also thinking, like, if you create it, right, you create it in air.
Yeah.
So my thought would be that the air would all, like, shoot out of it.
Yeah.
So you have this orb, and then as it's getting created, it pushes air out. So if you wanted to, like, encase someone in it, let's say, it wouldn't work. They just get pushed out of it as it was cooling. Like, it's impossible to... So it's always going to be solid, and it's, like, unless you make it hollow, I guess, with a little hole or something. And it's always going to push everything to the side. That's sort of my thought about it. But I was wondering, where do you go from there? Like, you get... Because you need... Because I want something that revolutionizes humanity. Like, an element that is... It's like plastic. It's the best at everything. But in this case, it's cheap to make. Like, well, plastic is. It's strong like plastic is. It's indestructible. It's got fascinating properties.
Yeah. No, I understand that idea. Like, I do that sometimes too, like, come up with things like, the one that I go to a lot of the time is either an element that is a super battery.
Yeah.
So basically you can put any amount of power into it.
Yeah.
Or an element that's a super generator. So it just produces a ton of power. Like, one of them, for example, was a crystal, right?
Yeah.
And so it's basically, like, it's depending on the size, but you, like, get one of these pieces of crystal, and all you have to do is put, like, a very light charge into it. And then out of any of its tips, like in the crystalline structure, it will shoot out ridiculous amounts of electricity, like, but it's depending on the size. And then basically you can capture that electricity with, like, rods and then feed a little bit back into the crystal, and it'll just do this forever.
How? Like, because that'd be breaking the rules of physics, sort of.
Yeah, no, I come up with physics breaking things.
Because, like, my thing kind of does, but I think it's enough on the edge. Like, we think dark matter's out there.
Yeah.
We don't know how it'd behave. Like, it could be that the weight of things... It could be, like, let's say you weigh, like, 1 billion kilograms, and most of your weight is made up of dark matter. Yeah. And so by extruding a bit of that into the reality, it's actually just the tip of, like... It's like the fingertips through the water.
All right. So the power, then, is just... There's, a 8th dimension... Right. Of electricity that just has pure energy in it.
Right. But then why do you need to feed in power? And how does this crystal access it?
Because the crystal exists in both things, and so when you feed power into it, it opens up it.
And why isn't it not highly radioactive?
Pardon?
And why is it not like highly radioactive? Because we've kind of filled out the table of elements, right? So it would. I mean, it could be a alloy, I guess, but I think it'd be a weird to gain new like properties like that. But I don't know, like there's some pretty fascinating crystals.
Well, we filled out the table of elements. However, some scientists have said there's a possibility that it's wrong and we're missing a few.
Not that I've heard, because it's fairly like I mean, I guess they could be like there's a weight because they don't go up by one molecule each time, I guess.
Yeah.
So there could in theory I guess be an element that was between like uranium and neptunium.
And besides, this thing could be a compound. This crystal could be a compound.
So let's try to because I think it'd be interesting if there was a gateway, right? Because you get something, you learn about something new, and then the next bit of science is just all the applications of it, right?
Yeah.
So you got your dark bloom. It kind of lets you access the, like, in quotation marks, dark matter realm, sort of. Like, it is part of our reality, but it's not an accessible part of our reality. But by measuring it, we can interact with it through heat for some reason.
Yeah.
So what if, like, in an environment suffuse with heated dark matter, it is easier for materials to pass, well, you can't really, like, the problem is, like, what my original thought was it was like a 4th dimensional metal, like you discover it in the 4th dimension sort of thing.
Yeah.
But you can't go there. It's like saying a stickman moving out of the page. It just can't.
Yeah.
So you need a way to discover it and interact with it. You need a way to look at it.
Yeah.
And then if you look at it, you can interact with it, which is, I think, a fairly standard idea. Yeah. So, and then I was thinking, and then for some reason, if by looking at it, you interact with it, suddenly a tiny bit comes of it, and then heat, like, almost cuts it off and it, like, falls down, or it, like, changes its nature. And then, so, like, how do you enter the 4th dimension? You,
Oh no, sounds completely unrelated to physics because you did completely dismiss my lightning crystals. And there's a little miffed about that.
No, I'm not done with the lightning crystals. I'm trying to circle back to them. Because how do you use your dark bloom, right?
Yeah.
to get the lightning crystal? Is it a compound of helium and dark bloom? Can you do compounds? Because it seems to reject everything that it interacts with. And if you allow it to interact with things, then that causes... What if noble gases... Oh, here it is. Noble gases don't interact with any element.
Yeah.
Except, it turns out they do. Every element is reactive. We just didn't... It's with Newtonian elements or whatever. So the noble gases can interact... If you suffuse an area of, like... Because noble gases glow when you heat them, right?
Yeah.
And dark... Yeah, it's all coming together. Dark matter glows when you heat it, and then it cools into this dark bloom metal, right?
Yeah.
So you pump in an area that you're heating dark matter in with like a noble gas, like xenon or whatever. And based on the noble gas, you get something out. So, oh, what's this? This crystal. And
well, actually, part of the idea of the crystal was they're like incredibly rare and not very much in the environment, and you can't be created synthetically, and so it's very much a geopolitical idea as well of different countries getting different amount of them, different sized pieces.
I think the thing about that is that'd be interesting in like the 50s.
Yeah.
I think energy is not going to be a problem for us if things continue as they are without some miracle discovery fairly shortly. I could be way off here.
Well, I was thinking like these things, the power these produce is so obscene that we can start like considering warp drives and stuff like that. Like,
yeah, so that's something like that, like on a different level.
Yeah, like that's the amount of power they produce. My sort of like like a tiny little like my thoughts are like the United States like they've mined up like a sliver-sized piece.
Okay, but what about this?
And it's like powering all of New York.
What about this? Right, like the creation process is very temperamental or difficult or time-consuming. Like you have to have this heated suspension of dark matter and neon for like 15 years for the crystal to grow around a core of a single dark bloom bead or something.
Yeah,
but like something like that.
Still, that would be based on then which countries have the most access. Where my thought here again was like saying like the geopolitical almost of like, what if some country in Africa turns out they have like a mountain of this stuff?
Right, but what if they have a lot more neon or something? Or what if they what if it also requires like you want just the right like gravitational influence or something, and it turns out that like Nigeria, the moon touches it just right, it pulls on it just right, and so you can simulate that gravity otherwise, or you can like you can pay Nigeria like, okay, we'll give you $1 billion if we can have a facility for 15 years there where we can grow one of these crystals.
Yeah.
And you get one of these crystals, and what it turns out the crystals do is you give them, it's kind of like a primer or lighting a fire. You stick in a little bit of energy, and then it starts converting dark matter into energy. But because it can contain it, like it can contain infinite energy within this indestructible crystal, you can siphon it off at a regular rate. Like you don't have to worry about resistors or anything. Like it'll just come out at like something like that. Would be kind of, because then you could like it would be. I kind of want like it'd be like a gateway sort of. It'd be cool, or it could be like dark matter as well, right? Who's to say that it's everywhere?
Or it's all the same dark matter in the same spots.
Like, what if it turned out it was all in Germany?
Yeah.
Like, it's all clumped together in Germany, and then, like, it becomes a race, like, you're going through the world and through space looking for other points where you can detect it.
Then you, like, try to make some dark matter in China, and you get this weird green stuff, which is, like, has reverse weight. Stuff gets pushed away from it.
Like, anti-gravity thing.
Yeah, but because, like, the dark matter dimension, actually, like, relative to ours, has different things. And
well, I think the rules would still apply, like, because they're not bubbles of reality, right? A different dimension is just a different rotation of an object. So the rules would apply to it the same.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean anti-gravity doesn't exist already.
Yeah.
Because, like, I think this is right, that the universe is expanding, and that expansion is accelerating. And I don't know if that's true, but let's say that is true for the moment.
It is true.
Then, I mean, as much as we can know, let's say. Why? Like, is there something, like, is it because as it expands, and therefore the distances become greater, so it appears to...
Well, it's expanding into a space, so it needs, and the space it's expanding to is getting bigger.
Right. So that would look like acceleration, wouldn't it? Because a circle would grow exponentially larger if its diameter expanded at a constant rate.
Yeah.
So that would appear to be accelerated expansion. Yes. So it might be something like that. But what if, at like the center of the universe, even though it's expanding into itself, so that doesn't really work, but what if the reason that things space grows between objects is like everything is shrinking constantly or something, or everything is growing constantly, including nothingness. Nothing is growing constantly, and the catalyst for that growing is like anti-gravity crystals or something. I don't know.
Yeah, no, you kind of lost me there.
Yeah, no. But I really like the idea of noble gases being able to mix with gaseous dark matter.
Well, you can write this in your sci-fi fantasy, and I'll have my geopolitical 50s sci-fi.
But it's like, it's the idea of like, okay, wow, we just discovered this crystal that converts dark matter into energy. Okay, first thing, what do? Like, let's say you discover teleportation, right?
Yeah.
What do you do first? Like, I think you probably connect, like, London and Chicago. Like, I think those are the two biggest, and maybe Shanghai or something. I think there's another big Chinese one or something. But, like, the main airports in the world, basically.
Yeah.
You get this teleporter that's basically this, like, let's say, kilometer-wide arc.
Yeah.
And it just... You think of the location while walking through it, let's say, for simplicity, and you walk through it there. So, where do you plonk these down? Now, because it's got a couple issues. Security. It's huge. You just march your army through there. You're in the center of like Chicago or something with your like London army. Like also like just border control would suddenly not exist. So you need to build like a wall around this teleporter, or you need some way to like give passes or something like.
Well, let's actually not say you think of the location. It's for simplicity. Let's say you actually have to basically. Okay. Each teleporter, right?
Yeah.
Has a key.
Yeah.
So the big old gate, it's like you give it a key, and it's just like its frequency that's running at.
Yeah.
And you wear a little badge.
Yeah.
And that thing is the key.
Yeah.
Of what you're going through.
Yeah.
And so
it like vibrates your body like.
Or it sends a signal through whatever. And like the floor, whatever, it's made of some material that doesn't vibrate.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, I'm synced up to London. So you go through there with that key.
Yeah.
So immediately then the security is you have to keep your key almost secret or something.
Yeah. Or make them one use somehow.
Or even it's not a kilometer big, it's much smaller.
Yeah.
Because...
But I like the idea of this big one as the first one. Like, they're like, we've discovered how to make a teleporter, but it's got to be huge and take a ridiculous amount of power.
Yeah.
And then later on they're like, okay, we figure out how to make smaller ones that take less power.
Well, so one of my thoughts with the teleporter is basically you portal it, so you use it like a portal gun, right?
Yeah.
And you just like drop a magnet through a giant copper coil.
Right. So then you kind of have...
You get yourself an infinite power source.
So the first teleporter, you make an infinite power source.
Yeah.
Although that doesn't mean... Like, how much does it take to power this teleporter, though? That's the question.
Yeah, well... does distance with gravitational acceleration, the magnet would keep accelerating even with the resistance of the copper wires, so...
Right,
until it reaches maximum velocity, there's like a bunch of stuff considered with it, but
what I love is like, okay, so you made your first teleporter, you're like, we're gonna link all the major cities on Earth. Boom, 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 boom. Then you make a better teleporter. It's smaller, it's compact, it's for you're like, okay, you know what? We're going to, in each major city, because we still can't afford to just chuck these everywhere. Yeah. We're going to say, okay, this one in Chicago, we're going to make a bunch of these medium gates, and they go to every major city in the United States, let's say.
Yeah.
And then we improve the technology even more. And then it's like, okay, every major city can send something out within, like, kind of in their, like, state or county or whatever. Yeah. Here's, like, it has, like, a mini teleporter keyed to that.
Yeah.
And then you get to the point where it's like, all right, here's your and you're like, okay, let's upgrade Earth again. Here's the teleporter between your office.
Yeah.
And then you get to the point where you're like, okay, what do I want more? Do I actually want teleporters between here and my office, or do I want teleporters between, like, my toilet and the sewage plant?
Yeah.
Suddenly you don't need piping. Suddenly you don't need power lines.
Yeah.
You barely need roads. Cars are obsolete. You're shifting everything over to these teleporters. Like, teleportation is one of those technologies that just changes everything.
Yeah.
Especially if you can do it on a small scale. Teleport electricity, teleport cars. Mm-hmm. No, not cars. Water. Like, you get to the point where...
Also, like, here's the thing to consider. Trading tariffs, like, stopping at ports and stuff.
Yeah.
Doing that.
But you could make, like, the big teleporters like ports or something.
Yeah, but I'm saying one of the big things about trade is your boat has to park because it needs fuel.
Yeah.
And so you park your boat at different ports, and then you have to pay taxes for parking at those ports. and there's like these huge trading advantages, like the sending a boat through that what was that thing to get from China to America across the strait that was dug?
The Panama Canal?
Yeah, Panama Canal.
Yeah.
Like there's a huge amount of taxes on that.
Right.
And so you can sort of like change that to be localized each city almost, and
Right.
that just changes trade power because location isn't as important anymore.
And I wonder what would happen to... Like, there's actually the book, Two Like the Lightning. They kind of go into this where they invent a car that is basically fuel-free for the purposes of comparison and can get anywhere on Earth in 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's an hour and a half, something like that. Anywhere on Earth. Doesn't matter from where to where. It's about an hour and a half at most.
Yeah.
And so what this does is it destroys the notion of a country in those books. But I'm kind of curious how people define countries, because what they do in the books is they define countries based on ideals. So you get the humanists that are into sports and artwork, and you get the Mitsubishi Corp, or whatever they're called, who they think it's about whoever owns the most property and the most land. And you get the cousins who think it's about spiritual awakening and helping others. And you get the European thing who thinks government is about having a great leader who you can respect, like a prince or a lord or something. And so that's what your loyalty is to.
Yeah.
And people don't live in nations, though, based on their loyalties exactly. Like most Asians, not Asians anymore. Most of Asia becomes like the Mitsubishi Corporation's land, and most of Europe becomes the European Federation's land, and most of South America becomes the humanist land. But you kind of just live in like, basically like a, what do you call those things? Like a commune. And that's with like you and your like 10 closest friends and family. And you all live there together. And you can go anywhere on Earth. So it's like, okay, we live in like Machu Picchu, but we work in like France, or we belong to the French like union or whatever.
Yeah.
And you can travel around. But I kind of wonder if that's what it would be, or would it be loyalty to your history, or would it be
I think
loyalty
it'd be loyalty to your history.
to your ideals? Like they kind of did ideals.
Yeah, I think it'd be your history and ideals of the country. I think.
Like if we had teleporters everywhere, would we give up on countries, or would we work harder to defend them? Like
Well-
if you could be in China tomorrow, right? Then it's almost like, well, then what's the point of calling yourself Chinese or Canadian?
Terry Pratchett had a short story about this guy-made machine which can teleport you to a parallel dimension.
Yeah.
And it turns out that the only dimension that had humans was ours.
Right.
So all the other ones are empty and they just have animals in them. Like the humans never evolved.
Yeah.
And so, like, person teleports and there's brand new land, brand new resources. It's all exactly the same.
Yeah.
And so the first things that start happening is there's like a bit of chaos because one of the things, people teleport.
Yeah.
Then they run over to where a bank is, teleport back, grab the gold or whatever, teleport, run back to their home, teleport back. But then it turns out that's pointless because you can teleport and look, natural resources humans never touch.
Yeah.
Go 3 dimensions down, oh, you got that. That's who owns these places, the people whose countries is parallel are the first people to get them to them when they go through the teleporters. And so like there's this huge religious thing which is like every single Jerusalem is like the Holy Land.
Right.
And so they're like trying to take control of it, and the United States is like, oh, we want this area full of oil, and the Saudi Arabia is like, no, this is ours. We are on every single one. So like battles start happening, and humans basically start expanding out, and like there's this huge mix, and each dimension starts getting settled. And it turns out the farther and farther you go, though, there's actually more and more variants. But just their idea of like, once you like, the first teleportation
Who owns it?
doubles the space we have available.
Yeah.
Doubles, like well over doubles our resources because they haven't been used at all. And then like who owns it, and then you can keep going further and further and further. I mean, that's just like the premise. There's an actual story about a guy living on basically one of the farthest dimensions ever, and it's really messed up because it's so janky, but...
And see, that's why I did it as like a news broadcast.
Yeah.
Because I almost prefer the premise to the story, I think. Like, I think Isaac Asimov, that used to be something he did a lot.
Yeah.
I haven't actually read much of his stuff. But the one book that's modern that I can think of that just goes pure premise, basically,
Yeah.
is We Are Legion, We Are Bob.
Yeah.
Because that is just like, what if you had super intelligent AIs?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, they could duplicate themselves, and then they could learn stuff incredibly fast and teach it to themselves all over. And they could upgrade stuff almost instantaneously and just expand, like exponential.
And it's sort of like the different perspectives of...
Yeah, and because Bob is like multiple personalities, sort of, or multiple people almost after a point, you can look at like different ways this might develop. Like one becomes like, this guy is now in charge of Earth. This guy has become a god on this distant planet.
Yeah.
He's like shaping this tribe as he sees fit.
Yeah.
And this one is like, they keep advancing technology too. Like they make drives that let them move like twice as fast, 3 times as fast. He improves his own memory so he can think faster. He starts making a virtual reality he can live in.
He makes robotic bodies that they can control.
Because he's like this bodiless mind, and so he's basically blind and deaf and can't interact with the world. Yeah. And he slowly builds a virtual reality for him to live in, as well as increases his sensors and his interaction in the outer world.
How far did you get into the books?
I only read the first book.
Okay.
But it's... and like, he admits it right off the bat. Like, the start of the first book, it's like, he sees this little like... put your brain into a machine. So he goes and signs up for it, steps out of the building and gets hit by a car. It's like, let's get started. Boom.
Yeah.
And it's, so I really like that sort of just explore this premise. Because it's kind of, like, I would love a game based around that, like Aurora 4X is.
Yeah.
But I also, Aurora 4X doesn't get into how it happened, whereas Xenonauts really gets into how it happened.
Even We Are Legion, We Are Bob, like, they actually have these advancements, like, they're trying to figure out the solutions to problems.
And they make it sound believable, even if it's not what would actually happen.
Yeah.
It's, like, semi-hard, it's, like, it's not quite hard science fiction, but it's, like, what could happen, what the series of events could be at a fuzzy outer look.
I mean, the story with, the Terry Pratchett story, I mean, has this kind of fun thing, which is why Earth starts varying so much.
Yeah.
It's basically because different dimensions had, different, like, there's slight differences, and when they start varying when you go really far out, is because there's this giant meteorite which basically skimmed by Earth and it got closer and closer and closer in every dimension, and so it's like would explode in the atmosphere, and so like there's huge changes in the landscape. And at one point, 2 guys are fighting, and while they're fighting, they're basically like switching between dimensions, so one guy's running away from the other. And like the like will fall 10 feet because like the ground starts varying so much, where they're like get trapped in their waists in the ground. But they have belts which basically correct so that doesn't happen to them as much. Then the guy's like, he's at disadvantage, he's injured, and he teleports, and then he teleports again. The person like falls in the dimension, and they're in outer space, because in this reality, the asteroid hit Earth dead on and just obliterated it.
Yikes.
And I just sort of like that premise where the one guy knew that was going to happen, so he like held his breath and just switched really quickly. And the other person was sort of like, what the dickens? And then they were like frozen in space.
And, what was it?
Well, it's just this like different way of exploring it, I guess.
Yeah, no, and you can do it from a more person level.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was it. And XCOM, what the other component I really like, because I kind of want to be at the helm of it, right? Like, okay, this got improved. Oh yeah, this got improved. Yeah, but I also really like the interesting like, here's the thing behind it. And then you go to XCOM, and it's not so much the technology, like they don't do it nearly as well as Xenonauts, I don't think, the technology improving. And it's mostly just stuff they steal from the aliens. Whereas in Xenonauts, they actually make better technology than the aliens.
Yeah.
They take the aliens' designs and improve them.
Yeah.
But in XCOM, what I love is that it gives you a bunch of useless, like, redundant materials. It's like, I'll use my machine gun underwater, and it barely penetrates, like, anything, because it doesn't have enough force. I need gas canisters. And I love that idea of, like, finding out what is redundant, what is not redundant. And you use, like, packs of dye as, like, your smoke grenades, basically.
And even in XCOM, a lot of the time, they have, like, a little extra flavor text of, like, so this material seems to do this, and we tried doing this with it, and we got this fun side effect.
Yeah. And, I don't know, I just really like it, and I think it's kind of... I think there's a way to combine game and story, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess is roleplay, really. Like, that's the best... But not, like, D&D, but more... Not like an RPG, but like a... Because it's not a role-playing game exactly. It's more like a... Unless you're role-playing newscasters. But it's more like history-playing game.
Yeah.
Or like... and there's games like that, like Nobilis and Microscope or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
That one especially is like...
Yeah.
Zoom in, zoom out. This was created.
Yeah.
And like they have another one called Kingdom, I think.
Yeah.
It's but it's fun. It's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah,
let's develop a game which is like come up with
technologies to get in.
a new element, and then each person like.
I actually did invent a game like that, sort of. And and it works. Like it's completely built, but it's weird because it's based on gnomic. But basically, you create technology instead of rules.
Yeah.
So you're like, all right. So what you do is on your turn, you can either invent a technology, you can invent a cultural thing, or you can invent a rule about the universe.
Yeah.
So you start with 4 cities and like caveman technology, basically, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, I'm going to implement a rule that the greatest supply of iron on Earth is by city number 3.
Yeah.
And next player's turn, and they're like, okay, these people invent stone mining, and it requires steel or something.
Yeah.
And then you say, okay, I adopt stone mining, because cities can also adopt or reject technologies.
Yeah.
They gain prestige by rejecting technologies, but they gain the technology by accepting it. And yeah, so I haven't actually ever been able to play it with anyone. Haven't had the chance, but I think it could do that. The one problem is there's no reason to go slow.
Yeah.
Like the rules kind of limit you in making your technology just immediately better than someone else's technology because they have to adapt it and there's reasons for them not to adapt it.
Yeah.
But the problem is the naming. The players would have to rein themselves into not... Because calling something stone mining,
Yeah.
you can... It makes it, like, it works. But you could also, if you want to just call it, like, I've discovered, like...
Laser drills.
And it would be the same effect.
Yeah.
But the naming would just make it feel less connected to the world.
Yeah.
So I don't quite have a way to limit in that sense yet.
Yeah.
But, yeah. But it's a neat idea, that sort of...
Yeah, my thought... So the game I sort of just came up with is... It's basically, you take Earth where we are now, whatever, and you go... So, each person, let's say, comes up with an element.
Yeah.
And so you're like... So it's a new element, let's say.
Yeah.
Like, we're wrong, there's an extra element in the table.
Yeah.
And so each person comes up with, then they all vote on which one they like best.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, might be hard. People like, I want mine.
Yeah.
So you could even pick one at random.
Yeah.
But then people basically, like, you come up with properties for it. Then you start coming with, like, technologies. And then people vote, like, no, we can't do that yet. Or, yes, we can. So you just have them, like, vote yes, no.
What if every player is a country? So you're like, I'm this country, I'm this country, I'm this country. And then each player comes up with an element, like you said.
Yeah.
But they do it in secret. They write it down. And they just write they get to give it, like, 3 properties.
Yeah.
Like, this thing constantly produces power, it's indestructible, and it's as dense as quartz.
Yeah.
Those are your 3 properties you decide to choose.
Yeah.
You don't tell anyone else about them. And then you start... I don't know how the game would play at all, right? But basically, your country discovers this metal. Or your element, right?
Yeah.
They start creating technologies with it. And you start saying, like, okay, I've made this technology. And you can also make it technology in secret somehow, right? So you're like, okay, I've made a new technology, but it's secret. Or you say, I've made a new technology, but it's public, therefore you can buy it from me for whatever. Maybe you trade, like, I'll trade you this technology for that technology.
Okay.
This technology exists. And your technologies can be based on your element or something. And so you eventually, like, I've discovered player 2's element in my mines or something, or like, I don't know how. It's very, very loose idea of...
Yeah, it's more thingy. It's just like you come up with the element, you invent technology, and the idea is just moving forward with it instead of some weird competitive.
No, it's not competitive.
But some weird like country game with secret. I'm just.
No. The secret is just because it keeps some like, ooh, what's more in the world? So you're when I say you play as a country, it's just like.
Yeah, but I'm saying my idea is different than that.
Right, but it's like. It's not a competitive game, though. This is a role-playing game about...
Yeah, I'm just saying I had a different role-playing game.
Yeah. But,
I'm not letting you co-opt my role-playing game into yours.
I don't understand. You're saying my game's different from yours, but my game's not allowed to be yours. That's contradictory.
No, your game's different than mine, and it's not mine.
Yeah. So
okay.
Why would you even bring it up, then?
Because the way you talk seems to suggest that you're co-opting my game.
But you said my game's different from yours, so I can't co-opt your game. Because that would be taking your game.
Yeah, but I'm establishing that you haven't co-opted mine.
But why would you even bring it up?
Because I feel like from the way you're talking, you.
So then I have
mine.
co-opted it. Like, you can't do both. I either co-opted it or I didn't.
Okay, you haven't, so let's move on.
So that was like a pointless interruption.
You're a pointless interruption.
Like, it's a different game, so it's the... Anyways. But my idea would be more like, the only reason you're a country is not because you're trying to make that country succeed or anything. It's just flavor, basically. So it's like, Canada has discovered this, and you're like, oh. And then like some sort of voting mechanism as well, like, is this feasible or something? And then people are like, here's my feasibility token, like, because I do like an element of like the world sort of like let's say in your game, right? Let's go off your game for a second. So people are like, okay, here's this element. We're going to use it to create a super strong rebar for building materials.
Yeah.
With this new element. And it's like, okay, but does that actually work? Okay, let's roll a die. Okay, like, all right, we got a 5, so it succeeded. Or we got a 3, it failed.
I think the dice would be neat. I think people just vote.
But why would you vote to not succeed? Like in that case,
because you don't see it's possible of working, and you disagree. It's like, nah, you like plead your case why it's wrong, and then then
you're just like world building collaboratively.
Yeah.
But I kind of I think
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, no, I think it's just no, I think I'm fine with it, but
you like dice being rolled.
No, there doesn't have to be a die. I think voting could work, but I think the voting should cost something. Like
you just want to gamify it more.
Sort of. I want to restrict it. I think the more restrictions is more good, basically. Like the harder it is to do something. See, if it's okay. Here's what I'm getting at. I like the idea of this incandescent light bulbs. Wow, that's amazing. All right, wait, I created fluorescent light bulbs. Whoa. Wait, I created LED light bulbs. Whoa. Well, actually, if you take incandescent light bulbs, you can actually redirect the heat back into them and use that to power them. And that actually gives you about equal to LED, if not slightly better. Bam! Whoa! But that's the old technology. So, if instead you say incandescent light bulbs, okay, well, the next thing is a gas that lights every surface as needed. Like, I want it to be slow technology, I guess. And you could have the players just vote to be like, no, that's too fast. But I don't think that would be... I don't think the players would enjoy it, because basically then they're like, I want the world to be this way. No, I want it to be this way. So, like, in Microscope, for example, you're just given control, sort of. You're like, you get to define this event as long as it makes sense with these other events.
Yeah.
Boom, 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 boom. But I think Microscope has the advantage of the time scale is undefined. So you say this happened after, but then you can insert something in between. Whereas for the efficiency, for the feeling of, oh, this is getting more efficient, saying the middle ground stage doesn't, it's like, who cares? I don't care about the middle ground. So I would want for my game, for it to be a slower process of building up, because you don't have the advantage of being able to go back in time in my game.
Well, I think you need building blocks to make things work. Like, using the technology of this, we've been able to do this.
Yeah.
You know, like, almost combining things. Like,
yeah,
each person gets their own technology, and then you can combine stuff almost. Like,
yeah, that's what I want to be able to have. But if it
I don't think it needs to be secretive.
No, the secretive is just for, like, you reveal that you create them independently, so you're not influenced by the others, but you don't have to, like, collaboratively vote on an element. There can be, like, 6 elements. And at some point, like, the whole game, right, could be about, like, China's element. And then at some point, it's like, I discover, and then Canada's element was discovered. And Canada's like, okay, yeah, here's my element. And then everyone's like, ooh, what can we do with this? So it's just, like, a fun way to, like, introduce stuff in that you didn't know would interact with in different ways.
Yeah, I just think that the hidden information would make the voting rather difficult, and you'd have to, like, base your trust on other people. And, like...
I would be like, it's basically, you create the rules of the universe, but you don't know all of them at the start.
Yeah.
So you don't know how everything's going to interact from the beginning. So you can't have a plan in mind for how you're going to steer the story. Instead, you're just like, okay, then all of a sudden, Nigeria's element was discovered. What does that do with this element we've been working with now? Ooh. So I think at any point, any player could be like, I discover, like, that player's element, and then everyone votes, and like, yep, now's the time. I discover this, and we vote on it. And it's like, okay, yeah. And I discover this, we vote on it. Okay, yeah. But I just like the idea of, like, sort of collaborative country almost. I don't know. It's a fun idea for a game in there somewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's this idea I had bouncing around in my head for ages of this dark matter thing. I just wanted to, like, try to see if I could make, like, a sort of radio show off of it. I don't think I quite did it because we didn't seem to be able to continue it past the point I'd thought it through. But...
Well, also, I had very little information, so it's kind of hard for me to play along when I'm just...
Well, that's my point. What my plan was, I guess, not my point. My plan was, when I got to the end of what I knew, then we start doing it together. Because I told you everything at that point. And then it's like, okay, let's continue. So now you know everything I know.
Yeah.
but it didn't really seem to work because it's something you have to think about. I think you
And
can't.
you also have to tell someone what you're doing for them to play along. And also, I need to know where it's going. I was getting a little like, hey, this is going on for a bit.
Well, I liked it. I thought it was cool.
It was.
You should have gone out for a bit.
Yeah, I had. I don't want to watch a 3-hour movie about your dark matter.
It wasn't it was a radio show. It was beautiful.
Alright, well, I'll leave it there.